Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're pulling back the curtain on a profession that's so often defined by just speed and complexity and, well, huge financial reward.
Professional trading.
Exactly. But we're not really here for the market dynamics today. We're here for the emotional landscape.
Right.
Because when you dig into the sources, you find that the intense focus the job requires. It creates this really unique environment, one that a lot of insiders have actually called the loneliest profession.
And that's such a fascinating contradiction, isn't it?
It really is.
Because when we think of high-stakes jobs, our minds usually go to, these high-functioning teams, a pit crew at a race, political advisors huddled together, or that classic movie image of a trading floor.
All that noise and camaraderie.
Exactly. But the reality for the modern individual professional trader, it's just dramatically different.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to sort of cut through all that noise and explore the very specific structural isolation that's built into this career.
We want to understand what that solitude actually feels like.
Yes, and more importantly, how the people doing this job rationalize it, how they manage that complete lack of immediate human interaction. It's a deep dive into, I guess, the price of self-sovereignty.
And we have to start by stressing this is not just about the convenience of working from home.
No, that's a key point.
The sources make it so clear. The isolation in trading is structural. It's literally built into the workflow.
So we're talking about hours on end.
Hours.
Yeah.
Just intense focus, spent utterly alone, often without saying a single word to another human being.
And that distinction is so important. When you look at what the job actually requires, the isolation is defined by a whole series of absences.
It's not there.
Exactly. There are no scheduled team check-ins. You are not on client calls all day or in strategy meetings. There's no background office energy.
Right. No one complaining about the coffee machine or having a random chat to break the tension.
None of it.
And that ambient silence is what really sets it apart from other intense careers like investment banking or consulting, where the long hours are typically shared hours.
Here, the whole experience is just defined by being alone.
Just you and the data on the screen. We see this phrase over and over. The entire professional experience is spent being alone behind the charts.
Behind the charts. It's such a powerful image. It's almost meditative.
It implies more than just physical isolation, right? It's psychological containment.
Yeah, let's really unpack that, the anatomy of that professional solitude, because the biggest thing really is the lack of a team structure.
Precisely. In almost any other white-collar job, even if you're the CEO, you have a team, a board, someone to bounce ideas off of.
Or at least a shared office.
At the very least.
Yeah.
For the individual trader, though, success or failure rests entirely on their singular analysis and their singular action. There's just no mechanism for organic collaboration.
So if the work itself is actively designed to eliminate that communal aspect, how does that, translate into the internal experience?
Well, that's what's so fascinating. Without that external feedback loop, without someone across the room nodding or questioning your move,
Right.
the whole emotional landscape becomes intensely internalized. It's incredibly personal.
So when you're that isolated, every success is solely yours.
And every single failure is solely yours. There's no external pressure valve, no way to discharge that intellectual or emotional buildup.
It creates a tremendous vacuum. You are, in effect, forced to be your own boss, your own team, and your own therapist all at once.
And that silent morning routine that defines so many traders' days, checking the markets, executing a strategy, it can become so taxing because the only witness is you. And that level of intense self-containment is why the isolation is felt so deeply. You just don't have that immediate human connection to reality check your biases or celebrate a win in the moment.
Or even just share the burden of a loss.
Exactly. It turns the whole thing into this self-reliant bubble completely focused on the screen.
Which, given that inherent isolation, makes it not at all surprising that the sources really highlight this critical counter-effort.
This need to actively build connection in a solo profession. And that phrase alone gives us a huge insight. If community and support have to be built, structured, scheduled, actively pursued outside of the work.
Then it's not a natural part of the job.
Not at all. It signals that the work structure itself is actually, for most people, socially unsustainable in the long run. Social connection becomes a secondary project, a mandatory fix to offset the job's design.
That makes the work-life separation incredibly stark, doesn't it?
Totally.
Your professional life demands isolation, so your personal life has to then actively compensate for this massive social debt.
Which brings us, I think, to the philosophical heart of this deep dive.
The tension that explains why traders accept this in the first place.
We get to the central dilemma that the source material poses. Is loneliness the cost of freedom, or is it the price of control?
It's a beautiful way of framing it, because they both result in solitude, but they imply such different motivations for sitting in that quiet room.
We really need to spend some time on the practical difference between those two ideas.
Okay, let's start with the first one. Loneliness as the cost of freedom. What specific freedoms are we actually talking about here?
I mean, most people trade a little bit of freedom for a steady paycheck.
Sure.
But for the independent trader, the freedom aspect implies this ultimate professional autonomy. They are free from the corporate hierarchy.
So, no mandatory meetings, no quarterly reviews.
No navigating office politics or groupthink. They achieve, self-sovereignty. They're free to choose their own hours, their own location, their own strategy without defending it to anyone.
So the solitude is seen as a necessary expense. It's the cost of admission for that kind of radical self-determination.
That's it. You pay with social connectivity, but what you get in return is the power to make your own rules.
It's an accepted sacrifice.
Exactly. If you want to operate on your own terms, you have to accept the quiet room and the long solo hours. The trader consciously chooses independence, and the solitude is just the known fee. It's a rational trade-off.
I gain ultimate freedom, and I lose the traditional structure of a community.
And that sounds incredibly appealing to anyone who's ever been stuck in a bureaucracy.
Oh, absolutely. But framing it that way as a purchase, a cost, it really emphasizes what you gain.
Autonomy.
Right. So now let's pivot to that second, maybe more loaded question. Is loneliness the price of control? How does that word price change the whole calculation?
Well, it completely shifts the motivation. If it's a price of control, then solitude isn't just a consequence of freedom.
It's a requirement.
It's an active requirement for achieving total command over all the variables, over the chaos of the market. The motivation moves from personal liberty to professional mastery and eliminating risk.
That is a key insight, because when a trader seeks control, they're trying to minimize anything that introduces variance or unpredictability.
And what's more variable than human interaction?
Exactly right. The pursuit of control almost always translates into eliminating external variables.
And in a corporate setting, what are those variables? There are things like relying on slow-moving corporate approvals or dealing with teammates who might introduce emotional errors or bad research.
Or just having to follow company policies that don't fit the market conditions.
The independent trader gets rid of all of it. They eliminate groupthink, delayed approvals, political maneuvering, everything.
So the silence isn't just a side effect. It's a strategic shield.
That's a great way to put it. You're isolating yourself to create a sterile, predictable environment for making decisions. You're trading the messy, unpredictable nature of human interaction for the clean quiet of solitude.
But hold on, I'm wondering if we're sort of splitting hairs here. Isn't radical freedom just another form of ultimate control?
That's a great challenge.
How do the sources help us see these as really distinct motivations?
I think the distinction really lies in the psychological function of it all, especially during times of stress. If you view your isolation as the cost of freedom, you are making an active, positive choice. When things go wrong in the market, you can rationally say, well, this is the cost I accepted for my independence.
It's an accepted risk. You endure the loneliness because you're still focused on the benefit of that freedom.
Exactly. Now, if you view it as the price of control, you're under a burden. The solitude is something that is exacted from you.
Right.
So when the market turns against you and you're utterly alone, that emotional weight is amplified. You might start to resent the isolation because it was forced on you by this need for total control. And yet, the control didn't save you.
The price suddenly feels a lot heavier.
And a lot less voluntary.
Yeah.
It shifts the dynamic from a rational choice to what feels like a crippling emotional debt. The idea of price suggests inevitability, like a tax demanded by the market, whereas cost suggests agency.
And that distinction must inform behavior, right?
It has to. A trader who's focused on freedom might be more willing to step away, to take time off, because that's part of their freedom package. But a trader paying the price of control might feel compelled to stay behind the charts even when they're exhausted. Because control is never fully achieved. It requires constant maintenance, which just deepens that cycle of isolation.
So we have this profession that's fundamentally defined by isolation, whether it's seen as the rational cost for autonomy or the heavy emotional price paid for a total professional control.
And in either case, the structure just demands this intense self-reliance.
And that self-reliance is the engine that drives success.
But it's also the very thing that generates this intense need for managed external connection. The work itself doesn't provide it, so it has to be built deliberately.
What really stands out to me is just how specific the mechanism of that isolation is. It's the absence of all those small, spontaneous human interactions of a normal office.
The water cooler chat, the casual lunch invite.
All of it. And that absence translates directly into this intense, internalized emotional pressure. The pressure cooker is real.
It is. And it just highlights the extraordinary mental discipline required, not just to manage risk and complexity, but to manage the self emotionally without any immediate human support.
So, to bring this back to you, the listener, and thinking about your own professional life, the world is increasingly moving toward remote work, individualized projects, high autonomy.
All of which inherently increases solitude.
Right. We've explored how, for the professional trader, achieving that total control or that radical freedom requires this intense isolation.
So here is a final thought to carry forward with you. If your own career path, regardless of the field, whether you're a remote worker, a solo entrepreneur, or managing a deeply specialized project, requires you to increase your professional solitude,
You have to ask yourself, are you viewing this as the necessary cost of freedom or the unavoidable price of control?
and regardless of how you frame it, what specific, active steps are you taking today to build connection, to make sure you don't end up paying the full price of loneliness?
Because the sources show us that emotional debt has to be paid somewhere.
It has to be paid outside the work environment, or it will inevitably overwhelm the gains of professional mastery.